Yeah, one of the cool things that I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, uh, well, there's two. One I won't share because I want to keep it to myself. No, I'm kidding. There's two things that I do with uh, AI. So I just pay for the whatever ChatGPT 4 subscription. And the first thing is I've created like one chat with all the information about CrossVal. So it's got like our pitch deck, it's got like every little update that goes on. Now this is terrible if Sam Altman is like looking this data up, but it's fine. Point being, I've fed it all this information about the company over the past year. And now whenever I need something, it's a quick like question I put in there, right? Let's say I'm applying for an accelerator. The accelerator is like, okay, what's your vision? I just go to ChatGPT, type those questions, it outputs.
Mm,
And it's like talking to an older version of myself because it's just my notes that I've put on there, and now I can
that's a
just
good one.
index and reference those notes.
Hey, Ajinkya, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast.
Hey,
Coincidentally, hey, go ahead. Sorry, finish.
she just started again. Sorry, I didn't know you had
no,
more.
no, no, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, wait, let's start again. Ajinkya, listen, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today.
No, of course, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like we color coordinated accidentally, which is good to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Wait, so you're currently based out of Dubai?
Yes, correct. I'm based in Dubai. I've been here since I was a kid, so it's been a while now. My family came over in 2005, and then we've just stuck around since.
Wait, so the 2005 was what, high school, or you came post?
Uh, I was in ninth. No, I was in fifth. Yeah, I
Oh wow,
was 9 years old. Yeah,
far away from high school.
yeah.
Anyway, but cool, man. Thank you for doing this. I feel like the reason why I want to have you on, obviously, I feel like you were on the VC side of things. You moved on, started something on your own. I feel like your product's really cool. We'll talk about your product, but you've also been dabbling. You have an AI layer or angle to CrossVal as well. But I thought it'll be cool to kind of get your sense because you're dabbling on both sides. You dabble both on the VC side and on the entrepreneurship side. So this is Mark Suster part two, both sides of the table. So that's cool, man. So uh, before we get into the CrossVal piece, I saw that we've spoken about this, but when did you do the triathlon? Which year was that? Tell me about the prep
Yeah,
and what
so
type was it?
so I've been running on and off for a while now, like 2016 or 17, and I do like 10Ks, half marathons. When it came closer to 2020, I think lockdown, and one of the things with my running was I keep getting injured, even now, right? I'll just for some reason keep getting injured. And someone told me in 2020 you should try this like thing called a sprint triathlon, which is a 750-meter swim, a 20-kilometer bike, and then a 5-kilometer run, all in one go. And I was like, okay, fine, let me just give this a shot. So I think New Year's morning, 2020, I was like, okay, let's just go to a beach here and let's just try to do this thing. Right. I bought a bike. Like, I didn't really train for anything. I was just like, okay, let's just see what happens. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. The short distance means you're not destroyed. You're still okay at the end of it, and you're able to push yourself. So then from there, I decided, okay, let's do one every month. Um, the assumption was I will train consistently if I do one every month. For the first 3 months I did, and then I was just doing the triathlons without training. Right, I would do it
Nice.
on a monthly basis, but I wouldn't put consistent like day in day out training for it. So it was a lot of fun in that first year, but then I started sort of looking back at data as we do.
Hmm.
And I realized, I'm not getting any better. Like I'm still like, okay, one or two times I was faster, but most of the other times it didn't feel easier, nor did I get faster. Um, and I think after that point, I was like, okay, let's just get serious about this because it's fun. It's something I enjoy, and I want to do this. And then so since 2020, I think I spent the first year, a year and a half, just doing it casually. And then after that, I got serious, so I started doing bigger races like the half Ironman and Olympic distance races and so on and so forth. It's interesting because it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot about like efficiency and managing each effort so you can do the next one. Like if you
Right.
swim too hard, you're not going to be able to cycle or run. If you so you have to just it's a balancing act, and there's a lot of data that goes into this. I think
Hmm.
that's what excites me about the whole thing. But
And what about
yeah.
the injuries? I feel like you started off by saying, "Hey, I used to get injured a lot, so let me do something which is more intense."
I think, yeah, I mean, the injury part has never really gone away. I still get injured all the time. But then I start training with a coach who like manages the whole thing really well. He's super type A as well, so that's helpful. And he's also sort of very similar in mindset. He's also an entrepreneur, so he gets all of those things as well. So it's a nice balance to my life right now. And I think the injuries are just like it's a part of the process. And one of the things I don't do is stretch and like do all of the recovery bit enough. So
Mm.
if I just do that, it'll be fine. But yeah, it's not a sport problem; it's a me problem.
I feel like today maybe you can get away with it. After some time, it becomes mandatory. The whole
Yeah.
stretching and the cool downs.
Yeah, my
No.
uncle runs as well, and he's like quite a bit older than me. He's also faster than me. But it's endurance sport is an old person sport, man. Like
It is.
5, 6, 7, 10 years in, when you've put in the consistency and the work, and you have discipline to execute it, that's when you really peak. Which is why I enjoy it so much, because I'm like, okay, this is a very long term thing I can keep as a part of my life, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, every
It's
time I'm racing, and I like initially I'd be like, oh, this guy's so old, I can easily overtake him. And then like you see how hard these guys are able to go, and it's like, wow, man,
yeah.
it's crazy.
It's funny. Similar actually. Even in Bangalore, when they had these marathon events,
Yeah,
the top of the pack are usually
yeah,
mid 40,
yeah, yeah.
45-year-olds, 46-year-olds, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely
It's
on the endurance side.
even the world
So
champions for a long time used to be like 36, 37. The age is coming down now because more young people are getting into the sport.
hmm,
It's also cost prohibitive. It's like tennis and golf, right? Like it's very expensive. Like bikes are
yeah,
expensive, coaches expensive, learning these things are expensive. So it's also got to do with um, like football or running. You can just go and do it, right? You don't
yeah.
need anything, but there's a lot of equipment that you need.
For three sports,
Yeah,
right? Not just one. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, true.
And honestly, in today's world, they'll find a way to sell you anything. Like,
Yeah,
oh, shoes are cheap. Let's make them expensive. Let's add carbon. Let's add this. Let's add that. So now they've got like $1,000 shoes that they make just for running. But
yeah. That's funny. But good to see something good came out of the pandemic. I felt like during the pandemic, relationships were being called off, and then you were like, "Let's start doing triathlons." So that's cool.
yeah, I think a lot of people started working out, man. Like working out outdoors. Like I used to go to the gym a lot, and then I fell in love with the outdoors in the pandemic, where I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Um, and it just so happens that it happened at the right age for me, where naturally you would sort of start doing outdoorsy stuff. Um, but yeah, in Dubai at least, like so many people now cycle and walk and run and do outdoor stuff. And even the infrastructure for cycling here is like through the roof. Like we have
Hmm.
dedicated cycling tracks, which is like almost a luxury. Like nowhere in the world have I seen sort of infrastructure of the sort for a sport,
Right.
um, which is pretty cool. Like for an amateur sport, like of course your professional teams have all of the things they need, but for the general public, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad you kind of talked about Dubai. I mean, we moved into, or rather, zoomed into Dubai and Middle East. Tell me more about. I mean, you've been there for 18 years, right?
Yeah,
Almost.
roughly. Yeah,
Uh, I remember I was there in 2011, and I was quite fascinated by Dubai. I was like, wow, like there's so
mm,
much that's happening in the middle of the desert, like massive buildings, a financial district, right? So, and in the last 10, 12 years itself, I feel like, man, there's been some exponential growth
yeah.
just from an infrastructure standpoint. So, what is it if let's say there's an audience here that knows nothing about the Middle East from a
Mm.
overall perspective, whether it's culture, whether it's startups, whether it's VCs, what is your take on the Middle East today?
I think it's a really cool place to be. It's going through. It went through its massive like old school business age where you had like trading companies and shops and large businesses and oil refineries that were set up. And the first generation of like the expats became very rich by just existing in this area, right? Like there's just no one doing building materials, right? So the first guy who did building materials and did it properly is one of the billionaires. The first guy who built buildings is now one of the billionaires. So the first guy who built the first guy or girl, I say it as a general term, but the one first doctor has the biggest hospital, so on and so forth. That wave sort of passed, which was sort of in the 90s, 80s, 90s. And then now we're sort of seeing a big tech wave, or over the past at least 5 years, where a lot of new entrepreneurs are coming into the space. Because then after that first wave, there was a lot of employment created. So everyone was like, let's move to
Hmm.
Dubai, get a job, and we're set. And then the same for the native population, right? Let's just get a government job and we're set. But over the 5 years, the interesting development has been there's a big focus on innovation. There's a big focus on entrepreneurship. Uh, if you have a government job here, you can take a year's sabbatical, go try entrepreneurship, come back if it doesn't work. You've got,
And do you get paid to start
yeah,
something on your own? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, pretty cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, you don't get paid for the, you get paid your salary, but you don't get paid for the, like, you don't get funded, but you still make your salary, right, which is
Like
comfortable.
more like Germany that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then the ecosystems are sort of being evolved around entrepreneurs. Banks are starting to understand what entrepreneurship is. They're still behind, but the wave is happening. And like if someone's becoming an entrepreneur now, there is room for you to fall into that second wave of people who really come here and are able to exploit or capitalize on the wave. uh, so that's what I see the Middle East as right now. Well, Dubai's always been sort of the big let's grow, let's build, but now we're seeing other countries come into play, like Saudi, Egypt, etc. And these are big countries with big populations
Yeah.
compared to the UAE. So UAE really needs to move as well. So
What's the population of UAE?
it's like 10-ish million.
Oh, I would have thought a little more. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's a small place, which is good and bad because the ecosystem is really nice because everyone knows everyone in the ecosystem. There's
Hmm.
a lot of inherent trust. So there are a few like outliers where you're like, okay, I don't know if this person's whatever, but for the most part, there's a lot of trust in the ecosystem, which is good. But
And what's the GDP like for UAE? If you had
I
to
don't
just
know actually. It's probably pretty significant. Like, let me look it up. Uh,
hmm.
yeah, it's like $415 billion.
Yeah, for a 10 million population, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. Saudi's double that, but per capita we are super high. It's like 88,000. It says here. Like the US is 80,000 per capita.
Oh
UAE is
wow.
88,000. Yeah, so in
Yeah,
comparison,
it's interesting to say because like I feel like with India, I mean, I was talking to one of my friends about this recently. Like everyone's talking about, oh, we're going to go to hit 5 trillion, 10 trillion. Like those
yeah,
metrics make no sense. It should come down to like GDP. I mean, sorry, per capita, right?
yeah.
Like per person spending power. Like we are, I think, at like $300 or like
Mm,
$400 versus is $80,000. I mean, that's massive. Like spending capabilities are huge, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, how big is the Middle East? Sorry, I'm going into things which are more because I think this is important for people if they ever want to try with the Middle East as a market, right? But how big is the
So
Middle East as a market?
Um, I'm not sure about the exact number, but sort of Saudi, Egypt form the bigger chunks. I can look it up right now. I think KSA is roughly 36 million. I'm not wrong. And then Egypt is a little bigger than that, right? But those are the big
Egypt,
countries.
Cairo by itself will be like 15 million, I think,
Yeah, like
or
Egypt's
20.
like 100 million.
Mm,
But on the like, so our business focuses on B2B. So I know the SME numbers and like the business numbers. The UAE has roughly 600,000 SMEs. Saudi has double that, and overall in the Middle East there are about 2 to 3 million SMEs. So that forms a significant market of who you can sell to as B2B customers, right?
mm,
Um, and then at a B2C level, there's a big disparity because there is Saudi, UAE, and a few of the smaller countries which have massive spending power, and then the bigger ones don't have as much spending power, right? Like Egypt, for example,
mm,
or Jordan, or some of the bigger countries. So then it becomes a tricky proposition for B2C players. It's almost like India, right? Like the big cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, massive spending power, and then the rest of India, not so much. Like,
mm,
how do you build a product that's equal for both levels of society? So that's always been interesting. But yeah, that's how the market is. It's very very segmented in terms of spending power. So if a
mm,
company is successful, like from a tech perspective, if a company's model is successful in UAE, it might be successful in Saudi, but then you quickly fall off in the other markets. But if you're really good in the other markets, you may not be really good in the UAE or Saudi because
mm.
yeah, the thing in high price markets is if you're priced low, then you also have that extra scrutiny as to, okay, like
Why
I
are
don't
you?
really want to, yeah, I don't really want to use a non-premium product, right?
Mm.
That's an interesting thing that happens as well. But
And do you sell? like to create a product, do we have to have it in English and in Arabic?
No,
Or
not so much. I think everyone speaks English. If you have it in Arabic, it's good. It helps you speed things up. But I think the same as India, right? Like if you can do English, you'll capture most of the market. Having Hindi will help some of your users. Same way, having Arabic will help some of your users. But I've been in very few situations where the language has been a barrier. Pretty
mm,
much everyone, again at the B2B level, everyone who's doing business gets English. So
sweet.
it's not really a thing. Yeah, it's super ahead of like um, especially over the past like 3 to 5 years. It's moved up quite a bit.
Okay. So Ajinkya, you were in the VC space for a while,
Yeah,
right? Before starting CrossVal. What were some of the patterns that you were seeing, whether it's for the Middle East or whether it's specifically for UAE? And then what kind of triggered you to say, okay, you know what, I want to start CrossVal? Or was CrossVal the first gig itself? So I mean, if you could get to that, I think that might be interesting.
I I think it was more personal, man. Like it wasn't. So I'm naturally a very rational, data-driven person, but for some reason, sort of when I took this leap, it was more of an emotional decision.
Mm,
Growing up, I knew I always wanted to be. I was really good at solving problems, right? So if in school I had to study something, I wouldn't approach it as, oh, I'm getting to learn or absorb knowledge. It was, hey, the exam is a problem. How do I solve it? And I'd be able to study that way. Which, of course, all my teachers hated because they were like, no, you need to study.
you're trying
And
to beat the system. Yeah.
yeah, and they didn't like it. So it is what it is.
Mm,
And then and then I went into engineering, and engineering was great because it's literally that. As long as you're solving the problem, it's fine, right? Of course, you'll have
was
a few professors,
what branch of engineering was it?
mechanical, as
Oh
vanilla
yeah,
as it gets.
where the ratios were 90s to 10 of men's
Yeah,
to women.
I think it was worse. We were a class of 150 with three girls. But it was great because if one of the girls was because girls are so diligent, right? One of the girls was in a group, like in a group project, you're set. Like you don't have to do anything. They'll
Yeah,
tell you what you need to do. Even if you don't do it, it's okay because they're like kind-hearted and
yeah.
you're good. So
They're
uh,
great at creating notes also, no? So yeah,
yeah, dude, just I think those three girls studied more than the other 147 boys. But
yeah.
no, but it was fun. It was I think the center of focus was learning to solve problems effectively. And from there, I think uh, the repeated pattern was, okay, this is something I enjoy. Why don't I just do more of this? So then I was like, okay, what's an industry where I can do more of this? And I came across private equity, VC, investment banking, where they're like, you get to the teams are much smaller, so you get overview of a whole deal. So I by this point I'd worked in engineering for a year alongside my university and stuff. And I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. So I didn't go into banking exactly. I went into consulting first. Um, and yeah, I seemed to enjoy it. I liked all the aspects of a certain business. I could, tinker with whatever I wanted. And then from there, I went into a VC. And yeah, it was exactly that. Where I had a lot of freedom to tinker, and at that point, I would interact with a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs, and understand their problems, what they're doing, what they're facing, etc. And one of the recurring ones was like the whole financial modeling thing. And then from there, I went to private equity, where I was like, uh, essentially in all of these jobs, your central focus is building models on spreadsheets when you're a junior, and then as you get better and better at it, you get to do more and more in the fund or in the company. And at this point, I was relatively senior, but I was still, balancing both. And I was like, okay, what if I just automate this financial modeling part of my job? So I have time for other stuff. So I started tinkering with like macros, which is like a function in Excel. Sadly, we didn't have AI then, man. If I had AI then, I think we'd be much further ahead of where we are. But yeah, I just tinker around. And then I was talking to a friend who works at another fund. Um, told him about what I would have been doing on the side. He was like, super interesting. Can we like test this out at our fund? I was like, yeah, sure. Did that. They loved it. They wanted to sign up as a user.
So what is it that you created when you say you're
So
tinkering on
we,
the fund? What was the
yeah, so I
product?
built a 5-minute process to create a financial model, right, in a very simplistic manner. And what I essentially did was a lot of the back end work was automated, right? I sort of front loaded it where I went and did all that work, and then I just linked everything that needed to be linked. And of course, this was a POC, so it's very clunky. It wasn't
Mm,
anywhere close to the standards the team has built today. But that was the overall concept. Let's just front load all this work, and then whenever someone wants to build a financial model, they just put certain inputs. All the work is already done. We calculate it and send it back. And yeah, no one had sort of tried to explore this possibility before. There are a couple of companies in Silicon Valley who had started at the same point, but they focused on building another Excel and not simplifying the process, which was interesting. But yeah, that's what we did, and it seemed to work. So now you could build a financial model or evaluation or projections or track your metrics, all of this stuff in less than 5 minutes without any like crazy MBA knowledge or CFA knowledge,
mm.
or any Excel formulas for that matter.
So let's say, Ajinkya, I am a startup. We have a team. Let's say we have not raised a round, okay, and but we have an MVP. Let's say we're doing, let's say we're doing $2,000, right?
Mm.
Uh, as someone like me, can I use your product? Am I relevant? Am I a relevant user? And then, what do I have to do to use it? Like, am I the target demographic?
Yeah. So if you want to understand two key things, right? Like if you're doing $2,000 a month right now, how do we take that to 5 to 10 to 20, so on and so forth? That's one problem we solve for. And the second is if you want to go raise a round, we help you project that as well, right? So those are two key things we help you solve. And then as your business scales, you're going to have less and less time to manage your finances. Once you set up with CrossVal, all of that gets automated. So all the metrics you need to track, all the metrics you need to report to investors, all of that gets linked when you sign up and onboard, and then it just stays linked. So none of the work needs to be repeated. You don't have to manage 15 spreadsheets. You don't have to bother anyone in the team. All of this stuff will get linked once, and then just stay alive for as long as you want. And then all you have to do is just use the data, infer the data, and make decisions based off of it. But yeah, that's usually the space and the target user for us. And the idea is to just give back your time, right? You shouldn't be spending your time crunching numbers. You should be just
Yeah.
spending your time making decisions, and that's what we enable.
So, point being, anybody that's making some revenue, doesn't matter whether it's $100 a month or $2,000 a month, or let's say $1 million
No,
a
not
month.
specifically. You can use financial models pre-revenue as well. In fact, pre-revenue they tend to be some of our most successful customers have started using it pre-revenue, and that's allowed them to sort of execute better, plan better, raise before
Hmm.
revenue, because they can project very accurately and sustainably, right? So yeah, it's been interesting.
Give me an example, Jinkis. I mean, because I want to delve into the product, because I think
Yeah.
this is cool. So let's say pre-revenue. Do you also provide? Because I think like valuations are changing based on ecosystems, based on times, right? Like I know SaaS was doing 1:10 on the raise.
Mm.
I don't know if you're raising 500,000, like it would be like a $5 million valuation. If it's a little more. So like, uh, do you provide suggestions? Like, do you help in the valuation phase? Because I think mostly for entrepreneurs, like especially if they talk to angels, they want to know what the benchmark is, right? So
Yeah.
does Crosswell help with any of that?
Yeah, so that's how we actually started, right? So CrossVal actually stands for cross validation, which is an algorithm in machine learning which uses multiple data points and then triangulates the final answer, for the lack of a better term. In this case, it's the valuation. In certain cases, it's a certain metric. In certain cases, it's a projection. But that's what we really focus on, right? How can we use multiple sources of data and convert that into a single source of truth? And that's what we do, right? So if you're a
That's
founder
it.
raising at a certain cap, a valuation cap, we're able to validate that. We're able to figure out what that cap should be, or if you've already raised at that cap, we will tell you, this is accurate. And then we do that for investors too, where if a certain fund wants to make an investment, it's something we help with. So we help value their portfolio too.
And is there a free version as well as a premium version to your product? Like how do
So generally,
entrepreneurs
we
access
don't
it?
do like a free trial, but we do like the first call that entrepreneurs or anyone who wants to use the product. It's not a sales call, so they can book a demo on the website. We'll do a demo, but in that 30 minutes, if there's anything you need help with, we're happy to chime in and let's say, hey, I'm a founder. I just raised 5 million on a $10 million safe note. What do you think? Did I do it right? It's something we are pretty chill about. So it's not It's not something we safeguard with our lives. It's wide open, so you don't have
Hmm.
to do like a free trial or anything to get access to the information. But if you want to do it properly, and if you want to like have things linked and have things validated, then we urge you to use the product.
Okay. And are you building? Who are you building for as of today?
So the focus has always been early stage companies, CFOs. That's a part of the market we've almost figured out. So it's essentially on autopilot now, and now we're focusing on some of the enterprise use cases as well. So we're working with a few banks, a few government entities that are looking to
How
automate
are
their.
banks? How are banks and enterprises using your product? Given that also like there's some data security that they need to deal with, right?
Yeah, so it's a very custom use case that we have to build. So our general tech has been built in a way where it can be quickly repurposed, and the perspective here is we are able to do financial mathematics or financial statistics very quickly because of how we are set up. So if you want to do a regression analysis of some data, it's just a quick drag and drop type of thing on the back end, and then you can deploy it on the front end. So when a bank has a particular use case, so for example, there's a bank who's trying to do ESG modeling, right? So building environmental and sustainability models, financial models. We're able to do that really quickly, or they want to evaluate sort of companies they loan money to, SMEs they loan money to. We're able to do that. There's large government organizations who have a finance function with like 50 people in there. We're able to cut that down to 20 people or 5 people by automating a lot of their finance functions. So for
Hmm.
enterprises, it's modular in a way where okay, what's your use case, and we'll tweak it for you. But for startups and CFOs, the offering's pretty standard. Where okay, we know what the problem is. Here's the solution. Why don't you implement it?
Nice. So when you started building CrossVal in 2021,
Yeah,
2021.
it's been
Okay.
about 2 years now. I had an idea in 2020, towards the end of 2020, but I really started in 2021.
And the MVP went live when?
I think in mid 2021, and then we've just iterated on top of that since.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously the whole AI wave picked up in November
Yeah.
2022. I mean, obviously, I know there have been some early adopters, right? Who've been, I know a company called Rephrase that came on 2018. Everyone was like, oh my God, like they're doing hyper personalization using videos,
Mm.
solving visual dissonance. And then suddenly it's like it's 2023. And then I feel like there are like 50 startups trying to solve the
Yeah.
same problem, right? So, uh, how have you looked at the whole AI wave? I see like there's CrossVal AI as well on the platform. So, how have you kind of adapted your product to it?
Yeah, so the first problem statement we solved for was getting users from no financial models to financial models in a very easy manner. And then we realized there's a second problem or a second layer to the same problem where, okay, even once you have a financial model, it's very hard to communicate that to another human, right? Like I can't give you a spreadsheet and
Mm,
expect you to understand it just as is because so
that's a good
much of
one.
it is in my head. So our first AI integration that we built was to feed these models into AI models and get a subjective analysis and sort of investor reports or loan applications, whatever you need to do with that financial model. We were able to write those using AI. So the AI would scan the numbers, get those inputs, and write this out. Now we're building a CFO bot which accesses all this information, sits in your WhatsApp or in your Slack, and then you can
Nice.
text this like your CFO. So you don't need to go hunt for a number. You don't need to speak the financial language. The bot will do that for you. So there's bits and pieces like that that we've created using AI, and then as we dive deeper into this, there's quite a bit we've got planned. But these are the two things that we're refining at the moment, and these seem to be adding a lot of value to current users.
Nice. And is this ChatGPT powered, or you're kind of built your own, or you've taken like models from, let's say, a Hugging Face, and then you added your data set to it? How does that?
So it's half and half. Some of them are powered by ChatGPT just because it's quick to iterate and prototype, and then from then we sort of created our own models and fed data to it.
Nice. Actually, this the chatbot, the CFO chatbot is pretty cool. Is that open to everyone in the organization, or is this more a founder thing?
No, it can be linked to a specific phone number. So you can
Okay.
just link it to your phone number. You can link it to 5 phone numbers or whatever. So it's very secure in terms of who can access it,
Hmm.
and it's linked to your CrossFile sort of account. So whoever has access to that account has access to the WhatsApp CFO.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Cool. So that's on the CrossVal side of things. Uh, by the way, pretty website. I like
Hey,
your
thanks.
website.
Yeah.
uh, Tell me a little bit about what are you seeing? Because I feel like for the first time, Ajinkya, like I feel like enterprise have moved really quickly with AI and the integration. So, what developments are you seeing when it comes to Gen AI and just finance, whether that's personal finance, whether that's investment banking, large banks, fintech? What applications are you seeing of, I would say, just Gen AI or AI as of today?
As much as enterprises want to say they're using OpenAI, I don't think anyone really is. Because as an entrepreneur, you're incentivized for getting things done quickly, right? Like you and I, if we can get POCs built in 3 hours versus 3 days or 3 weeks, yeah, we're super heavily incentivized for it. Because then we can move on to the next thing and sell this, and so on and so forth. But as an employee, you're rarely incentivized for getting something done quickly. And as a
Good point.
result, like AI is not used to optimize for time, it's AI is used to optimize for effort, right? Hey, I don't want to go through this Excel sheet, so I'll just use AI to do it. Whereas, an entrepreneur would be like, I don't have the time to go through this 100, 500 line Excel sheet. So I'm not sure how much AI is really being used within enterprises. At least in the enterprises I interact with. I'm sure there's like some more innovation focused companies, of course, like the top of the pie that are using it, but the majority of the companies I don't think are. First of all, ChatGPT, you can't even use it in an enterprise because it's on the public domain, so you can't put your data out there. There is on-prem deployments of it, which you can use. There's like Copilot and stuff, which you can use, but I really don't
Almost
think.
doing too many layers to
Yeah,
use
I
it.
just don't
Hmm.
think employees care enough to like. There's a few of them who probably do, but your general everyday individual
Hmm.
is just not incentivized to,
Yeah.
because there's a learning curve, right? Like the first 2 weeks you spend with ChatGPT, you're just asking it like, oh, like stupid questions you can just Google. But once you then understand how it works, is when you're able to do sort of really high end stuff with it. And there's no incentive to investing that time, right? So for example,
Hmm.
my mom and dad, both of them have jobs. My mom's a teacher. They've used it for like once in a month maybe, and then they just didn't care. They're like, it works, like my current
Yeah.
workflow works, why do I need to use AI? And it's more effort to go and try and learn that. Um, so
That's
I
true.
genuinely don't know how many people are actually using it. Of course, people are paying for it and people are buying these subscriptions, and the growth in
Hmm.
ChatGPT is huge. But then again, in the regions we are in, there's always a massive lag, right? Like something that happens in the US will follow 7 to 10 years in the UAE or in the Middle East and India, right? So it's a
I
huge.
Yeah, I think the cycles are adoption cycles are maybe reducing just given with what's happening, right? Like with distribution channels being in place. But to your point, uh, I feel like with a lot of these AI tools, it's highly iterative, right? Like you use it once, you don't get the output, people are like, you know what,
Yeah,
it's not
it
for
doesn't
me.
work. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Hey, go man. Yeah. It's funny. My mom, you're talking about this. My mom is also a teacher, by the way, and then she teaches accounts. So I was like, listen, like use it to create your assessments and
Yeah,
like questions and stuff. And then I think she tried it once and then she was just like not happy with it. Then I was like, you just got to go through the process, right? So
yeah.
it's not as smart as you think as a context input. So
Yeah, one of the cool things that I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, uh, well, there's two. One I won't share because I want to keep it to myself. No, I'm kidding. There's two things that I do with uh, AI as not a part of the product. So I just pay for the whatever ChatGPT for subscription. And the first thing is I've created like one chat with all the information about CrossVal. So it's got like our pitch deck, it's got like every little update that goes on. It's got some of our metrics as well. Now this is terrible if Sam Altman is like looking this data up, but it's fine. Uh, anyway, point being, I've fed it all this information about the company over the past year, and now whenever I need something, it's a quick like question I put in there, right? Let's say I'm applying for an accelerator. The accelerator is like, okay, what's your vision? I just go to ChatGPT, type those questions, it outputs.
mm,
And it's like talking to an older version of myself because it's just my notes that I've put on there, and now I can
that's a
just
good one.
index and reference those notes. And I always tell entrepreneurs to have this going because yeah, you can't write this 50 to 100 word passage about your company each time, right? There's only a certain number of times you can do it, and then it's just quicker to copy paste.
Mm.
So that's one, and the other one is very similar, but just more um, sort of idea generation. So similar concept. Keep one chat, and then from there you can ask the questions like, okay, you know about this company. How do you apply it to this use case? How would it apply it to this use case? How do you apply it to this company who does X? So for example, hey, you whatever ChatGPT, you know about CrossVal now. I'm talking to a potential client, Ani, who runs a company that does XYZ. How can we apply it to his use case? And it'll
Mm.
it'll surprisingly not only give you suggestions on what product you can build, but it'll also so for example, if you need an API for a certain product, it'll write that API, it'll create a product brief, it'll create like sales literature, so on and so forth, right?
Mm.
And then you just pass it on to your team, and then they'll execute it. But a lot of your thinking work as a founder is minimized, right? And then you can leave. It's that order of thinking thing, right? Like memory is the lowest order of thinking. We have calendars to replace it. Sort of from there, then you can unlock your brain for creativity and problem solving and so on and so forth. And then I think AI does the same thing for me when I'm like, okay, a part of the creativity is just holding on to all this old information. Let me put that on ChatGPT. It'll do the first layer of creativity, and then from there I can build on top of that. So yeah, I think it's revolutionary, man, what it's able to do. The other day,
Yeah.
someone was I was reading a blog, and someone was like, "Oh, if you create this product through ChatGPT, where you can upload all your notes, right? Like all your journal, like your personal stuff, your journals, your business ideas, your thoughts and feelings. And if AI is able to, scan all of that and then stay with you as a companion, which, indicates, hey, if you're feeling a certain way, this is because of X, Y, and Z. Hey, remember that idea thing you had? Maybe you should put it together. It just becomes like a searchable and indexable history
Yeah.
of your own thoughts, which is huge, right? It's almost like having a second brain.
Yeah.
That's able to like pull out information for you. It's not like a notebook where you have to go search through things.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs should do this.
No, no, fair and very well said, Ajinkya. I think the piece which I think based on what you were saying is I feel like when it comes to we being consultants for someone else, we do a really good job, right? But
Yeah,
when it has to consult, when we have to consult ourselves, it's just I don't know, it's tunnel vision. We're not as good, and I think it's POVs, right? And I think to your point, the AI second brain co-pilot, if you can create a version of you that can give you creative output and creative variations, man,
yeah.
fantastic. So well
Yeah,
said,
you're
well said.
your own. Oh, I read this somewhere. You're your own best boss, but also your own worst employee, which is
Right.
very accurate.
That's true. Uh, cool. So tell me a little bit about, are you building this for the Middle East today and then you're looking to expand, or rather building for UAE, then looking to expand to Middle East and then global? How what's the
No, we were
plan?
pretty global to begin with. So a lot of our growth initially has been organic. We were revenue first, so we monetized very early, just through my network and things, and um, and then we continue to monetize through those organic channels. But now we're also figuring out inorganic channels, which is allowing us to go more global. Right now, roughly 70% of our revenue is UAE, 20% Saudi, and then 10% rest of the world. We plan on growing that 10% as well, but to be honest, the product's very agnostic, so it can adapt to the industry and the geography you're in, and provide you data from those sources. But yeah, it's quite open. It's not something we're localized about.
Sweet. Cool. I feel like I have asked the set of questions that is needed. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that could be interesting. What do you see in terms of your competitors? Are you seeing like, because like with markets today, right? Like I feel like with AI, what's happening is, oh, like image generation, text with video, all this generation, I mean like output because of generative AI is picked
Yeah,
up, right? So suddenly it's like you have 20 players that are competing with, let's say, a Jasper or a copy.ai, which is for
yeah.
input to output text, right? So with your space, are you seeing suddenly a lot of people jump in, or you feel like, hey, I'm in a niche, it's growing, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what's your perspective?
I think for our ecosystem, we're very ahead of the curve, or we're early, because most of our competitors are in Silicon Valley, right? And they're ahead. They're generally like the cycle is they're 4 or 5 years ahead of these markets, um, which is good, which is kind of comforting. But like for example, one of the strategy aspects is when they choose to expand, they can just we can be a good acquisition target, or we can actually go and compete with these guys, or so on and so forth. So we do a bit of both. So the onboarding time for on average, the onboarding time for these companies, these competitors, is about 1 week. For us, it's 30 minutes. So we have massive advantages from that perspective. We've acquired some users that they've churned, things of that sort. But overall, I think the space is early as well. Like no one's really trying to solve back office problems yet. In a way, this is a back office problem, right? Like you need at a large organization, there's not a sales problem. Everyone solved the sales problem with CRMs and all of this stuff. But this space where I think Monday and ClickUp started, where they're like, okay, let's replace one of the 500 million things a spreadsheet is used for. Uh, this will start
Hmm.
becoming more and more common as we go, because yeah, I think not everyone will want to use spreadsheets in the future. I use spreadsheets for a lot of things, but if there's a simpler way, I want to do the simpler way.
Is there a local version also of your product? And what I mean local is not connected to cloud.
Yes,
Uh,
you can deploy it on premise. So for the enterprise guys, that's how we do it. And then we're able to still provide you with some of the AI tools without your data being pushed into the public servers. So yeah, you can deploy on premise. You can just use it on AWS, however you want.
okay, sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, I think this was great. I feel like we have what we need. So thanks for coming on today, Ajinkya. I think good luck, obviously. I mean, if
Thank
there's any
you.
way that we can help, happy
Of
to.
course. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and any updates, please keep us in the loop. I think in terms of everything AI, any
Yeah.
updates will kick in straight into the platform. So
Yeah,
thanks
absolutely.
for
Yeah, tons to come. So super excited. And of course, you'll be the first ones to know. And yeah, thank you for having me. And it's been a good chat.